just pursue the goodness of who you are and the uniqueness of your DNA, and be as nobly pursuing that as possible, and looking at the bigger life than my success, my bank account, my car that I drive, the way people think about me and the impression that I make and being remembered and all of these things, because it's all nonsense. And people who thought this way 200 years ago, they're forgotten. Name more than 10 people from 200 years ago. Most people can't do it for 1824 because we all get forgotten. So the best thing that we can do is pursue what we know to be true, which is life is short and we can make it worthwhile by pursuing the truth.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the pod. My name is Joseph Zoftis, or Joe. I am here with Anthony Garone, who is the founder and CEO of Edify Content. You guys do technical writing for technical companies, for tech companies, mainly with basically providing them with content so that they can rank higher on Google and do all that fun SEO stuff. Thanks for coming on the pod, man.
Thanks for having me. I would add to that anything that needs words, even if it has nothing to do with ranking on Google. We write it, ebooks and like sales enablement stuff, email newsletters. There's a whole bunch of stuff that tech companies need that really has nothing to do with search engine optimization, and actually will make a much bigger difference in their business than organic search traffic.
There you go. Technical copy and copy for the whole funnel. Yeah. I wanted to start out with I guess the question that everybody has at the front of their mind, AI. AI has been a huge craze. It seemed like everything happened backwards. There's a lot of people that said, oh, everything that's human and creativity related, AI will not be overtaking that anytime soon. It seems like everything happened backwards. I just wanted to get your take on your thoughts on that statement and what's happened in general with how it seems like every 6 months this thing just like triples and doubles. So just wanted to get your take on how you feel about AI, how you've been using it, and just an overall opinion.
I think the answer everyone wants to hear is that it's decimating my business. Because people aren't, when I get asked this a lot and they're like, oh, so what do you think about AI? As though I can't do my business anymore because of AI. And I think it's kind of funny and revealing about how well AI has been marketed and how powerful people think it is, even though most of the AI content that you see, you can just smell that it's AI. Like if you can tell it's AI, then AI is not good enough. But the answer that is the truth, not the one that people want to hear, is I absolutely love it. And this surprises a lot of people. AI, generative AI specifically, for content production has been such a huge blessing. Like I think of it as the calculator for content people. Like mathematicians were using slide rules and working things out by hand for a long time. And now I, as a content person, have a calculator and it can do tons of great work for me. And it's like having a junior level writer on my team 24/7 who works really fast and has access to basically all of human knowledge. Just like a junior employee, you would never use junior level content in your production business. Very rarely do you get lucky with an intern or a junior level employee and they hand something in that you're like, wow, this is so good. Great job. You really nailed it with this one. Most often you end up with stuff that's like, this is a great start. this saves me several hours of research and thinking and writing. Now it's more of like an editing process, and the cognitive burden of editing is so much lighter than the cognitive burden of creation. So it just, I'm able to produce a lot more a lot faster because of AI. And it also makes me laugh when I have prospects who reach out to me and they're like, well, we're looking for a new content agency. And I say, why? And they'll say, the last ones, they were using Chat GPT to do their work. I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Like I do that too. And I think the difference is taste. Like the people that I'm replacing don't have enough taste to know that AI content looks and smells and tastes like AI. And the content I produce doesn't have that AI smell and taste and look, because we massage all that content into something that's readable and enjoyable. So I'm using ChatGPT too, but I'm using it as a starting point, not as the final product.
Can we both agree on two things? Number one, this term massaging ChatGPT, I feel like came out of nowhere. And that's like the new buzzword of ChatGPT.
Really, I
That
haven't heard
is,
it before.
it's really
Yeah.
there's one other person that I know in your space. He helps authors specifically. His name is Leandre, and he used that term before, and I just like earmarked it as like something that anybody who's like deep in AI, they always use that term. The other thing is that I would be super curious to see the content that did you ever get a chance to see the content that previous agency put out? Did
Oh
they even
yeah.
have the foresight to remove the
Yeah.
word unlocking from the beginning of every ChatGPT?
There's a lot of these, I call them AI isms, like there's the whole thing about the world in an ever-changing world, or the landscape that's constantly changing in this accelerated business landscape. These kinds of things are nonsense that humans don't say. And then you overusing words like ensure, this ensures that, it is ensuring, or this is key. Like nobody says this is key. Like doing code reviews before merging with your master branch is key. Like that's such an AIism, because nobody in their right mind ever ends a sentence with is key. So we're good at identifying a lot of that stuff. And then just if it sounds too academic or uses unnecessarily big words, unidiomatic phrases, that just goes, like my whole it, my whole thing is like, make this a frictionless experience. When you're reading something, you should never have to stop and think, especially if it's top of funnel SEO content. Like it should be like candy or sugar. Yeah, I can read this and I don't have to think, and I'm getting information and I feel good by the end of it. Sometimes I laugh, sometimes there's a good story, whatever it is. But that to me is like, it's like getting a really bumpy piece of wood and I just sand down all of the bumps, and then it's like, oh yeah, this feels good now. So I don't think, I've never thought about massaging Chat GPT, but I guess the content it puts out, it definitely needs to be massaged into something that is good.
So is that one of the bear traps that people fall into, as far as they think that the content that GPT puts out is like good enough, and they'll think like, oh, I'll just play the quantity game and I'll make like 3 blogs a day, which I'm sure Google loves, with that latest update that came out. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Oh man, yeah,
But yeah, what are some of these bear traps that people fall into, thinking that they can do your job for pennies on a dime? And
oh, for sure. Well, first of all, the idea that you can do content for cheap is just silly. Um, if you want it to be good, you're still locked into the iron triangle of fast, cheap, and easy. Um, but it's sort of like, you can do things fast and cheap and easy with AI now, but it's sort of missing quality. And people forget that, like, a search engine bot is not your customer. Like, I'm not here to please algorithms. I'm here to make people change their mind about buying something. I'm here to plant a seed about what a company is capable of doing. Anyone can make content that raises ranking in a search engine algorithm, and you can do that quickly. And sure, you might think there's real value in that, but you could also be like the number one result for turd sandwich. Like, does that help you? Like, what's the point? It, yes, you're competing with other articles, but like, how many times have you clicked something on the front page or first page of Google, and then you click back and go to the next link because the first one sucked? It had these banners at the top and then this big pop up, and then you couldn't read the article, or so boring and confusing. Anyone can produce boring, confusing AI content that ranks well. That doesn't mean they're doing a good job. It just means they're gaming like a vanity metric. Just like someone with a lot of followers on social media, that doesn't mean they're smart. It just means they know how to do good on social media. Or people who do really well at school, that doesn't mean they'll be successful. It just means they're good at school. School teaches you to be good at school. And it's a game and a system, and that's cool. But last time I checked, you don't become a millionaire because you know how to ace a test, you know? So I think it's all kind of silly, and AI is not a threat. It's an enabler. It's a tool, just like saying we can have more mathematicians now because we have calculators in our pockets everywhere we go. But how many people really want to do math? you know that's really the bigger issue. So if people were actually more interested in making content that was interesting to read, and they used AI, that would be great. But instead, people just want to, like, they want the novelty of typing in a prompt and getting an article and putting it on their website. Like, yeah, that's cool, but it'll only last you a short amount of time, and then it'll start hurting you. It's success, like, in a way that doesn't help a business.
How do you get articles and content that pushes the right buttons? Obviously, from an SEO standpoint, there's more buttons to be pushed than kind of the art of writing a newsletter, let's say, because that's just straight content in an inbox.
Mm-hmm.
Versus focus keywords and quantity of keywords and things like that. But how do you, from just like a blogging standpoint, from an article standpoint, how do you get it to push the right buttons, but also be like highly readable and interesting?
The way I look at it is, if I'm getting paid to read this and I think it's boring, why would we put it out there? Like, if I can't get through it and I'm literally incentivized to write it and read it, you know, why would someone who is not incentivized actually read it? It doesn't make any sense. So why put something out that sort of like puts your reputation at stake? Like, I wouldn't want to put something out that's just so boring and unengaging and then say, hey guys, I wrote that. Isn't that cool? Or, hey, I used an AI to produce that. Isn't that cool? Like, no, you're poisoning the water supply. And there are lots of guys who think that's a great business model. There's that Jake Ward guy who started Byword, and he got in trouble with this whole SEO heist operation, basically downloading the sitemap from another company and then telling an AI to go produce all the same content and then posting all of that content onto that site's competitor's website. And then he went super viral, got the whole content world angry, and then Google like killed all of the traffic going to that website. So he was a fly by night success, and he's done this on several sites, and he's still playing whack-a-mole with Google. But like, why would you take pride in producing hundreds of pieces of content in an instant that no one wants to read, that no one can trust is correct? It hurts your brand when you put stuff out that's bad and incorrect, and doesn't actually help the person who's reading it. A bot's never going to use your content. Like, Google's website crawler is never going to use any of the tips that you put in your articles. A human will. So like if you want your brand to have a positive association with readers and potential customers, well then put out good content that's correct and interesting. And we're seeing this like turn, the tide is turning away from quantity and more towards quality. And you see it with guys like watch YouTube, Mr. Beast and Mark Rober and a lot of these types of people. They play the numbers game, but like they are moving more towards novel content. So I think it's really about be consistently good than be really fast at pumping stuff out. I don't know what, like, don't you have a, don't you experience this? You consume a lot of stuff on the web. Like, what's your take on it?
What was the guy's name that you said ripped off the sitemap?
Jake Ward.
Okay. So I'm seeing two things. There's the people that paved the way, and they paved the way almost by happenstance. Like they're just being their authentic self. It's hard to replicate that. And by being themselves and just saying the things that they want to say, they carve out their own niche, and then people will then follow that. Then there's the second kind of person. The second kind of person is the person that's looking for the quick arbitrage.
Right.
The Jake guy, Jake, he strikes me as more of the second kind of person where they're, and I mean, don't get me wrong, like it's smart in its own way, but like at the end of the day, you're gonna pay the price in some form. Two for, one for being unoriginal, two for, in Google's eyes, kind of breaking the rules or trying to cut a corner that you shouldn't. And they're cracking down on that, as we both know. But I think people don't know how to be original. Like even my first thought, and I'm trying to think of like how to get the most actionable advice out of you here, right? So that's my whole job. But my first thought is, well, like, how do you write content that isn't boring? How do you answer questions that people have, right? There's like the really like technical answer to that, which is like go on Ahrefs. I call it Ahrefs, but go on Ahrefs, download, for particular keywords, a list of tangential keywords that are like those and that people are searching for. Look at that, high, what's low competition, high volume keywords. And then that's kind of like your mind map of like what people are looking for. And then there's the approach of like, well, why don't you just talk to your customers and kind of map out the questions that they're asking naturally, and then write an article from the heart for that. And that's kind of like the more authentic approach.
Yeah, in the business world, authenticity doesn't really win. It's being competitive. Um, and you do have to compete with the Jake Wards of the world, and that's okay. But I think like it's people look at content as sort of like some sort of magic bean, like if I just throw these content beans out into the ground, they'll grow into beanstalks and get me to heaven. But the reality is most things are duds, or the beanstalk grows a couple of inches a day and you need it to be like 500 feet tall. Um, and it's hard to keep all that stuff growing or maintain it all. And sometimes people come and chop it down, or, whatever. Like you can take this metaphor as far as you like. To me, winning in business is more about attracting the right kinds of people. Like if you had 30 solid warm leads a month versus 500 cold weak leads, I would take the 30 any day. I would not want the headache of working with 500 potentials who may or may not actually give me money. And that's kind of who we try to help, like customers who are playing the game of, I need to attract this type of person. I don't need to attract everyone. I need to attract this demographic, and this niche, whatever it is, like software developers or DevOps engineers or like C-level decision makers at these types of companies who are facing these types of problems. Way better to write targeted, smart content than generic stuff that's just going to attract a million people who would never buy from you. Secondly, you said, how do you create content that's like engaging? Well, I think you just have to be an interesting person. you know, like you have to be able to see a story in something. Like I could write about data governance all day long because I do so much of it, but it's better to tell a story about data governance than just describe what data governance is. Um, and I think like if you can see a story, if you can see some meaning in it and sort of like have a sense of who your reader is and connect them with the thing you're trying to write about. My wife would never read a story about data governance ever. She's a nutritionist and a wellness writer and dietitian, these kinds of things. But I bet there's a way that I could connect governance, data governance with her field of interests. And that's kind of the challenge of being a writer. How do I connect this topic with this person who's probably experiencing some kind of pain, and I need to describe the value that they would get if they start reading this article and then potentially consider buying the product that we're promoting.
Do you ever use templates? And by templates, I mean structure, like templates for the type of content that you put out. And the
Well,
reason I ask this is because I watched a video of, you know who Brian Dean is?
no.
Okay. He's the guy that, have you heard of Backlinko?
No.
Okay. It's like this massive SEO blog that he ended up selling for, I think, like many millions. And then he went on to do another company. I think it's called Exploding Topics, where they, I don't know exactly how they do it, but it's some kind of arbitrage on information where they'll package like trending topics, and big companies pay them a lot of money to kind of figure out what emerging markets and emerging sentiment is on different verticals and stuff. I know it sounds like a lot of jargon, but it's cool. And anyway, he put out a video. He still like does a lot for the SEO community and the content writing community. And he put out a thing where he said like for our company, we only use like these 9 templates. Are you looking it up right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we use these 9 templates, but like really like 4 of them are like really amazing. You should definitely check that out. But I was wondering like if there's any kind of structure that you have to make sure that the content isn't boring.
Well,
Or
for
like a
our
hook.
AI content, yeah, we generally start with a story. Like it can be an actual historical anecdote or metaphor. Imagine you're this, imagine you're on a ship and you're sailing to whatever and this and that. Sometimes we start with metaphors or a story where you're like, what? This has literally nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be reading about. And maybe that's jarring sometimes, but we always bridge the gap. And I feel like we do a pretty good job at telling a story. I wrote I wrote an article for a client just recently where I took "To Be or Not to Be" and turned it into like a Shakespearean poem about data quality monitoring or something like that. And it's totally silly and ridiculous, but the client has a sense of humor, and we were like, well, let's see what happens. Let's see if people dig it, if they laugh about it. Getting people to laugh is a really important thing, or at least smile and appreciate like, wow, I don't think I would have read that anywhere else, and maybe someday someone will talk to my client and be like, what was the deal with that article with the Shakespeare intro, and then it said something like, back when Shakespeare was writing about data migrations and database replication across the cloud, silly things. One of our clients has a slug in space with like a glass space helmet on and a rocket on its back. That's fun. It's fun. It's funny and memorable. They could have just said next generation enterprise solutions on their website, but they have a llama in space and a lion in space and floating above planets, and way better to have fun and be interesting and memorable by just being creative and authentic and not pandering to business jargon. Like, be human first. I tell my writers, like, imagine you met someone at a bar and you can say something like I actually met a guy yesterday at a data conference that Snowflake was hosting locally. And he's like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, you know how you go to websites and you spend 10 minutes on a company website and then you're like, I still have no idea what that company does. I fix that problem." And he's like, "Oh my goodness, man, that happens to me all the time. It drives me crazy." I could have just told him I'm a content marketer for B2B tech SaaS. But why would I do that? That's like so boring. I would never, I don't describe myself to anyone. I'd have a hard time looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, I'm a content marketer for B2B tech SaaS companies. No, it's like so lame. I actually want to tell someone, you know, that thing, that irritating thing that you experience, I get that too. And I started a business to fix it. And they're like, oh, cool. I'm glad someone's working on that. So these are the ways I think about being engaging and interesting. It's, I'm not writing an article, or my writers aren't writing something about data governance. They're writing about, like, man, doesn't it suck when you have like 10 databases in different systems and you have to monitor all of them and make sure that, like, you're recording every transaction, and oh my goodness, what a headache. And then you've got these execs who want these analytical reports and you can't get the data to be consistent. That's engaging, you know? Or I could just say, yeah, I write content marketing about data governance. So be interesting, be fun, think about what you do in terms of stories, connect with people. I don't know. You can't be engaging if you're a boring person with a boring, non-thinking brain. And I think AI is kind of the boring, non-thinking brain. And if all you do is feed an AI a bunch of topics and you get a bunch of articles back, that's really boring. Even if you tell the AI, hey, make this interesting, you know, throw in a joke or two, like, yeah, haha. I'm sure AI is a great comedian. Like, it's dumb. It's like a shortcut. And there's this author I like, and he said, hacks are for hacks. So that's how I think about it. You can hack your way to some idea of success. It's up to you, but it probably won't last.
And that's that anti-arbitrage kind of mentality. Man, so much to say. I think that's a huge takeaway for people right there. Something that you said, I think it was like a couple minutes ago, where you're not describing what you do, but you're not even saying like the problem you solve, but like it's the problem behind the problem, like the deep problem, if you want to coin that term here and now. But yeah, that's something that people should think about when they describe what they do. I literally fell into that trap like last week. They're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I make video content easily accessible for businesses," and they're like, "Great,
Cool. All right. So next topic.
yep.
Right.
How's your day going?"
Yeah. There's actually a good book called, I think it's called Brag. And the subtitle's like How to Toot Your Own Horn Without Blowing It.
Uh-huh.
The author's name is Peggy Klaus with a K. And I heard her on a podcast, and she asked the podcast host to describe herself and what she does. Why did you start this podcast? And the host, you know, gives this like a similar spiel, like totally uninteresting. Oh, you know, I make a podcast for women about growing businesses. So then Peggy is like starts asking probing questions. Okay, what got you into this, and what's the most exciting thing about it for you? You know, these kinds of questions to get more meaningful information. And then Peggy says to the host, okay, let me take a stab at what you actually do. And she takes all of this information she gathered and does like a 20 to 30 second spiel that the host is like, oh my goodness, yes, that is what I do. That is why I do it. So Peggy is able to just ask a few questions and turn like I make videos for businesses so they have social media content into something much more extraordinary and interesting to hear, you know? So I think people undersell themselves. They're awkward about talking about themselves and what they do. Um, but if you are solving a problem, well, that's cool. But if you're just someone who's like, oh yeah, I produce a whole bunch of AI articles and get lots of stuff posted online, like that's completely uninteresting.
Why do you think people don't get leads, even though they have all these articles that rank?
Well, there's like 1,000 reasons for that. It depends on the context, you know, and the company and who they're selling to and the total addressable market and um, how well they're actually getting their information out there. Um, I often have to tell my clients, like, just imagine going to your website and you've never seen it before and you don't know what you are selling. And I just did this to a client the other day and they completely changed their website the next day, which is great. I'm glad that they responded so quickly. But, you know, the top of their website was like AI first, da 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 da. I'm like, literally no one is looking for this. Like, nobody looks for AI first anything. That's not a term, you know?
That's another way of saying commoditized first.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the sort of my little party tricks is, and that's like, it'll make me sound really lame by calling it a party trick, but, and I think you've seen this. Guess how many pages say next gen enterprise solutions?
In terms of percentage?
No, just like the literal number. If you go to Google, how many results are there for next gen enterprise solutions?
I'm sure there's thousands.
Yeah, there's 8,000. And if you go to Google Trends and look up search traffic, how many searches do you think there were in 2023 for that term?
Probably very low.
Zero. The traffic is so low, Google doesn't even have data to report on it.
This is another classic example of like business jargon, like word jargon. Like, what does that even mean? Next gen enterprise solutions. Like, okay, like you have some kind of B2B, next gen B2B thing, but what does it do?
It literally means nothing. I don't even know what current gen enterprise solutions are, you know? Like, what is a solution? You know? So the most important thing is no one is looking for this. You know, it's like that meme, no one, literally no one. And then it would be like SaaS company, next gen enterprise solutions. It's it's a waste of time and money and real estate and all this stuff. And it's not just that these sites say it. If you search for the term, it's at the top of these websites. We
Which
offer
one?
next gen enterprise solutions. You're like, dude, why are you wasting your own time here? You know, actually say what you do, because what you do might be actually pretty interesting and cool. And yet somehow these companies find customers. So when you're saying like, why don't companies find leads? Well, if lame companies with stupid sayings can get business, they're probably just not getting it through their website. So if somebody says, I don't have any leads, it's probably because they are depending on one, maybe two channels, and they are not effective in those channels.
There's also the other aspect of like, at the end of the day, you have to have whatever your offer is, you have to have traffic, driven to it. And then if you have traffic driven to it, it has to convert.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people might need to understand whether they have a traffic issue or they have a conversion issue. You either have no eyeballs on your thing, which is like the first problem that you need to solve. And then I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He has like 17,000 visits on his website. He's like a local lawyer, but for whatever reason, like he has a tiny conversion rate.
Mm.
It's like, okay, you have a lot of people looking for you and finding you, but why are they not buying?
That gets into
That's the next constraint.
deeper questions, like what is the search intent? A lot of times people are searching for um, like a quick fix, and maybe you're using all the same keywords as the quick fix query, but your fix is not quick. And so they might like scan your page and they're like, oh no, this is going to take too much. This is going to be expensive. This is outside of my whatever interest, capability, blah, blah, blah. And so they just hit back and then go to the next result. You can rank really well with bots and still have poor human performance. So it's good that you figured out the bot part. It's good that you have 17,000 people visiting you. Um, but I think of it as like inviting people into your home. Like, why is nobody staying for a drink? you know, they've already entered your house or your store or whatever you want to call it. Why are they just turning around? Like, they're not even asking you more questions. Out of 17,000 people every month, you have an arena of people saying and doing nothing. Why are they there? Like these things, business owners, they don't think in these ways. They're like, we've got to convert them. And really, the better question is, well, why are they there in the first place? So if you don't understand why you're getting the traffic, you will never convert anybody.
What's the typical situation with your clients when they come to you? Do they typically have traffic issues or do they have conversion issues?
Oh, it's
Walk me through like the A to Z, because I'm curious.
There's no typical, except I would say everyone wants more leads. I've never seen I've never had a company come to me because they have a lot of leads. It's always like, we want more leads. And then the question is, well, why aren't you closing the leads that you have? And sometimes it's, we don't have any leads. Sometimes it's, well, people don't understand what we do. They don't understand our product. Sometimes it's, our salespeople don't understand what they're selling. There's like a whole host of problems. So what I do in the content world is super consultative. I produce content, but really I help businesses function through content, and I help them to accomplish business goals. I don't just post stuff. I was an executive myself. So like, I would never just spend $5,000-$10,000 a month to get blog posts put online. That's why Jake Ward will be successful, because there's a million business owners who just think, I need more content. That's why my business is not succeeding. And no, it turns out you can get 17,000 hits a month and still not convert.
The noise.
What
With
about
all
it?
these people putting out content and like more content than ever. I wish there was a graph actually where you could see the amount of blogs. There's like I think 1 billion blogs out there, right? It's like one blog. Sorry, seven. What is it? 7 people for each blog. 8 people for each blog. Google just released this new update. I think it was in March, where they're like de-indexing like crappy content.
Yeah.
Have you looked into that much?
I don't make crappy content. So like a lot of the changes that Google introduces have almost no bearing on what I do. But I can tell you that companies have come to us and said, why are we not performing well anymore? And then I can say, well, here's what Google has changed. For example, we had one company that does very well and they have good conversions, but their traffic, like they were getting 100-some thousand hits a month, and then they were getting 60,000. And it turns out Google started prioritizing search results for mobile users by incorporating mobile page speed performance. The content that I write has nothing to do with how well a website performs. But if they have a bad, like JavaScript is single threaded in a web browser. So if they have some JavaScript thing that's slowing things down, I can show them with the developer tools in the browser, hey, whenever someone hits your website, they're waiting 4 seconds for this script to execute. You really should have that at the bottom of your page after the page loads. And Google will show you through the page speed test
Insights.
checker thing. Yeah. It'll show you like how many seconds until it received the first thing, or it painted the first thing on the website, on the page. If your scores are bad for mobile rendering, the best content in the world will not show up on the first page. So does that have to do with content? No. Again, consultative nature and being a technologist myself, I've literally suggested how to optimize JavaScript loading to clients on their websites, or to change the structure of their websites so they're not loading a movie that's streaming in the background in the header on the same page where there's a blog post. Sure, do that on your about page or something. Like, no one's going to hit your website because of the about page. But if you have landing pages and you have homepage and other critical traffic entry points to your site, and you have bad page speed rankings, well, you can't fix that with content. You have to actually look at your CMS, look at how your JavaScript is loading. There are back-end pieces that you can install that can preload and cache all of your stuff that you're going to send to your web agents. So there's a lot of things that can affect performance. So when Google makes changes to their algorithms, they don't penalize content that's good, that people like, that people read, but if your site sucks, then they'll be like, well, we don't want to put bad stuff on the shelves. Like Google's more like a grocery store. You walk down an aisle and all the stuff at eye level is the stuff where the brands are actually paying the grocery store for prioritized shelving space. Like the grocery stores literally sell vertical positioning in each part of the store, and end cap placement. So Google doesn't want to put bad websites that are slow and intrusive at eye level, because it makes their search engine look bad. It would be like going to the grocery store and just horrible products were at eye level. And then everyone is shopping by looking down near the floor or looking up, and they can't reach the product that they want. So that's a bad product experience for Google users. It's you don't generally blame the grocery store when the food doesn't taste very good, but the grocery store does influence how your food tastes. And they don't want people going, I don't know why I shop there. Everything I get there is bland and it's outdated and, expired. Boxes are broken. That's basically the equivalent of Google search results, which is why Jake Ward got severely penalized and why Google is trying to crack down on sites that suddenly are publishing hundreds or thousands of articles a month.
Selfish side note, just curious, what's your site built on, and what hosting / builder
I
combo
use Squarespace for everything. Not sponsored. I know they sponsor everyone and everything. I built a career on website development. In a previous role, I would sell websites that were $75,000 to start. We had websites that were in the mid six figures. Personally sold $750,000 of websites, for this company.
Can you say the company?
Well, yeah, they were called Melt Media, and then they were acquired, and now they're part of this whole conglomerate of agencies. But the platform is not nearly as important, but the ability to update it is important. So Squarespace is great because it's drag and drop, and it's super frustrating to use as a former web developer. Like, why can't I just do this little simple thing, But
The padding blocks are really weird on
yeah,
Squarespace.
there's just so many things that are frustrating. But 80% of what people need is really easily available on Squarespace. I wish that I could optimize their sites so they loaded faster. I wish there are a lot of things I could fix, but it's a trade-off that for me, $20 a month is a fantastic value. And yeah, maybe I take a penalty on the page speed results, but we have a few terms where we rank really well, and Squarespace hasn't seemed to have slowed that down.
I think for sites that don't require any crazy functionality besides like a contact form or anything like that, I feel like Squarespace just does the job just fine.
Oh my goodness. I mean, why would you use something else unless you're a nerd?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, and it's nerds. I'm a nerd. I like nerding out. I literally wrote content management systems for fun. Like, that was my hobby. My website, every 6 months or so, it was a brand new CMS so that I could stay up to date on like how CMSs work, and I could process the way databases worked, and I could learn about querying and data structures and these kinds of things. And that's cool. But why not just use Squarespace?
You
There are no
sound like me and my
plugins.
PC. I like rebuilding it from time to time.
Yeah. Like
But
WordPress plugins and all that stuff. What a fiasco. Vulnerability issues left and right. And I'm not saying it's an insecure platform, but like my wife's website is on WP Engine, and I pay to have a secure site for her because her site was hacked like 3 times, and I had to rebuild it. And I was like, that's it. Forget it. But she hates Squarespace because it's too inflexible for her. But yeah, I think you can make any CMS work, but it's kind of escaping the point. It's like, should I wear a red shirt or a green shirt if I'm going to do these type of stock trades today? Like, it doesn't matter. The real issue is, do you understand how the market works? And in the content world, it's, do you understand how people read, what they're thinking about, how and why they click links? These are the issues. And once they click the link, do you know how to get and keep their attention? But I can tell you, pop-ups and big loading screens and huge nav bars and all this stuff that gets in the way of the content, man, you're just providing a lot of friction between your audience and the stuff that you want to give them. So there's a lot of factors there. So user experience design does come into play. But as I mentioned earlier, Google has literally scored your website based on how slow it is. And they will not put slow, crummy websites on page one, period.
I have one more side question, and then I really, really, really want to talk about your personal brand online.
Okay.
But so the side question is this: do you do any kind of newsletter work? I forgot. I think we talked about this.
Yeah, we have some writers who do newsletters. I don't like newsletters. We have a newsletter, we just don't send it. I'm not a fan. I like having a mailing list, but I don't like writing newsletters. And 90% of newsletters I get have zero value. It's just people churning out content, feeling good about themselves.
Okay, so for the people listening, what is the difference between a newsletter and a mailing list?
Well, the way I think about it, and I'm not a marketer, I'm not an expert in these fields. I think of a mailing list as a way to reach the people who care about what I do. So I have their email addresses, but a newsletter is like a periodical. It's a thing that you send out at some frequency that hopefully has value to your readers. And in today's world where you can be deplatformed for who knows whatever reason, if YouTube thinks your content is dangerous, they'll just put up a community guide or a community warning, and you get a copyright strike and all this stuff. And I've seen channels that get taken offline like in an instant. So it's good to own your contact list in that sense. That's what I mean. A mailing list is like a repository of email addresses for people who actually want to be in touch with you. And a newsletter is like a project that it's a content production project where once a day, week, month, whatever frequency, you're putting something out to that list that hopefully has value to them.
Lately, I've been reading a lot about the agency space, and I feel like a lot of people are jumping on the newsletter bandwagon. Something I've seen a lot is people they'll kind of treat the newsletter like an ad. So they won't summarize the YouTube video that they just put out, but they'll kind of like tee it up, and then you've seen this, huh?
I hate it. If I wanted to watch your video, I'd subscribe to you on YouTube. But if I really care about what you do, just give me the title and a brief description, and then entice me to watch more. Don't entice me by withholding information. I know clickbait works, but I'm just not interested in that. I'm not a hyper growth person. If you look at my business, no one would say I'm hyper growth at all. I'm more of a lifestyle business owner, and I'm sure that inhibits how much growth I've had over the last few years. But there are people who are really good at the growth thing, and there are tricks that work, but I don't want midwits following me either. And so my audience is people who don't fall for midwit stuff. They're people who get irritated with reading an article and then a pop-up, hey, before you go, give us your email address. Or like what's his name? Neil
Patel.
Yeah. He posted some link recently to a website that captures your email address when you visit a site. You don't type it in. It just like somehow uses cookies or something and just gets your email address. And I'm like, that is so invasive and annoying. I would never want to attract people who like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I won't grow fast, and I'm not interested in growing in that way.
But Jake is.
Yeah, good for him.
I'm just kidding.
The fact that the world is different, or that everyone is different, is what makes the world great. Yeah. And I think you're more, I wouldn't say you're like Jake. I'm just saying, like, on the spectrum, you're definitely closer to Jake than I am. Like,
for sure.
I'm the artist, I'm a creative artist, and I have that like silly anti-business element of me, sort of the contrarian. I believe in the market, and people who do good work should be rewarded, and they should grow, and that kind of stuff. Very old school, whereas a lot of new school is like growth at all costs, get that hockey stick curve. Not me. As soon as I start smelling that stuff, I'm like, you know what? I wish you luck, and I'm sure there's a better person out there for you to do this work.
Something I've always admired about you is your patience. you kind of like you'll see the stream go by and like there's a lot of hype in the stream, but you'll always look at that and go, I'm not interested in that shit.
I'm just kind of old school skeptic, libertarian sense, not in the more political libertarian sense, and not in the alien skeptic, you know, more like let things play out. There's always a hype cycle. There's definitely value in the hype, not just the hype itself, but there's a reason people are hyping something up. And I'd say 80% of the time people are just bored and they want something to hype. And so they get into it. Um, but there's always like a kernel of truth in the hype cycle. Like, oh, this is actually exciting and good for these reasons. Um, like as soon as something gets popular, it turns me off. You know, like uh, I don't want to see Oppenheimer, even though I like all of Christopher Nolan's movies. Oppenheimer just got so much praise. I was just like, no, that's enough. I don't want to see that. I did see Dune 2 and I loved it, but I tried to avoid all of the gushing feedback. I mute words on social media all the time so I don't have to see the hype. As soon as I see something getting people excited, it goes on my mute list for a month.
It kind of just struck me, you know, there's a quote out there like zig when other people are zagging. You tend to do that a lot. Why?
I don't know. Don't you get annoyed at stuff?
I think I'm still figuring out my tastes.
Uh-huh.
So I'm a lot more open to different ideas. And I have my own ideas, but they're like some of them are weakly held because I'm open to change. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
you know me.
Yeah,
For as long as you've known me, I'm very quick to pivot on stuff.
that's true.
Um, there are certain things that annoy me,
Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking, I'm open to certain new thoughts and ideas. I think you've really figured out what it is that you like,
Yeah,
and
that's for
and
sure.
and you've drawn like a very like the thick Sharpie that they sell. You've drawn like the big circle around that, and there's like a small opening that you've missed, and that opening is like the room for the out of the circle stuff.
Yeah, for example, when NFTs were going nuts, I got really close to making NFTs because I've made a lot of art. I've made a lot of stuff that I think was NFT worthy. And then I was like, you know what? This costs a ton of electricity. Like the sale of an NFT and the minting of an NFT, it costs like literally 1 month of a household's electricity just to do that one action. And I felt so grossly negligent about like the use of resources just by participating in it, that I didn't participate in it. And I don't regret it because it did turn out to be NFTs or like a total womp womp, thing. But at the time, I was like, you know what? I think there is merit in this non fungible notion where people can sell things that are not really exchangeable and replaceable. Um, and it does add the sense of value to a digital work. So there's a lot that I saw merit to, but as soon as it started like smelling like, oh man, everyone's after this because there's a ton of money, like I'll never be rich because of that. As soon as people start throwing a lot of money at something, I'm like, oh great, here come the midwit investors, and I'm not like some IQ exclusionist or something. I think everyone has dignity. I love so many different types of people and cultures and all this stuff, but there's something happens with the human psyche when it comes to like making money online, and hacks are for hacks and shortcuts and all of this stuff. And as soon as like people who are undisciplined start getting huge leverage out of things they don't understand, I get turned off. Um, like the guy who, I think this was a Nassim Taleb anecdote, a guy who invested in green lumber and became a major millionaire. because he thought the idea of wood that was green seemed cool, when he didn't know that green lumber just meant like freshly cut and, still wet, like these rapidly growing trees that had a more green wood, and they would basically, kind of like bananas, they would ripen over time. They ship green, turn yellow, and they use gases and stuff to change the color of bananas. Well, there's highly processed wood, and this green lumber idea like really took off, and some guy became a millionaire just because the idea sounded cool. I don't like today. I feel like something like that happens all the time, and there's like a million people who will just throw money, time, and attention at it. And like, to me, I just think, I'm not interested in short-term trends. I'm interested in discipline and living a serious life. And I don't mean not funny. I mean like serious with a capital S. Like, I take things. If I'm going to invest my time and energy, it better be worthwhile. And like you said, I miss out on certain gaps. Well, some of those gaps turn out to be huge successes that I coulda, shoulda, woulda, But because I'm such a staunch, uh, I don't know, protectionist over myself, I I miss out on that stuff. What, like, this is a good opportunity for me to hear from someone who is really smart and has a very different belief about this. So tell me your take on this. Like, when you see something getting hyped up, I feel like you get excited and you want to participate.
So first of all, I don't think that you're protective, but that's the second part of what it really is. I think you're very decisive. You
Okay.
have to be decisive to draw this circle. By the
Mm-hmm.
way, none of this is a dig. This is a major compliment.
Okay.
I'm just no, I'm just saying.
I don't see it as a dig either way, but thank you.
It's a major compliment, and I want to get into your question too because it kind of plays into people, that I'm seeing online and some of the things that I fall into that I think are not so good. But right now, there's so much, speaking of content, there's so much content going around out there, and I'm actually, deciding on what circle I want to draw in terms of what I want to talk about online, which we'll get into if you have a little bit more time. But there's so much new stuff flashing in front of your eyes that for somebody that hasn't drawn that circle, for somebody who hasn't made that decision like you have, everything is new and exciting. And you're almost like grabbing at these fireflies. Use these 5, chat GPT prompts to make $1,000 a day, right?
Oh
And you're
yeah,
like, oh my God, dude, $1,000 a day with 5 GPT prompts. Let's go down that path. And you kind of like dip your foot in, and like as soon as like your big toe touches the water, and it's just like you're right past the toenail, all of a sudden you see another video, and it's like this crazy content arbitrage right now on TikTok Shop. All you have to do is go on TikTok Shop. Somebody just made $700,000 last month. And you're like, pull your toe out and put it in there. And it's insane. And you see a lot of people there's tons of opportunities. And yes, technically, like if you stayed in it long enough and you actually got the 80-20 of whatever thing you've decided on, and you've invested your time in it, because there are worthy shortcuts, I'll say, that you can
sure,
take, right?
yeah.
You've read the book The One Thing by Gary Keller?
No.
If you say you picked up guitar, obviously you're a guitarist, this is right up your alley, and I'm definitely going to shoot myself in the foot here. But what did I do, man? You want to get good at guitar, but really you want to get good at blues guitar, right? So like you might start learning the blues scales, you might start learning pentatonic, right? You're not going to get into like all the Lydian stuff, right? Am I still kind of on the right track?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I can't believe it. So anyway, you're like, if you want to 80-20 getting good at playing the blues, you're not going to like start learning like classical nylon string guitar. You're going to listen to like Stevie Ray Vaughan, maybe like you like the newer like John Mayer stuff, Muddy Waters, all that like older stuff. So I saw that eyebrow raise. I know some stuff. I'll send you my Spotify playlist. You'll be impressed. But anyway, you're going to get into that, right? Like the 80-20 is to learn that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the problem, getting back to all the opportunities that people are seeing online, is that they don't make a decision. Like you can still 80-20 the crap out of anything, right? But they don't make a decision. They don't draw even a small circle about what they want to do and go down that path and see it through. They dabble.
Right.
You don't dabble.
No, I generally have stopped dabbling. I made that decision consciously years ago. Also, I think you raised another belief that I didn't credit enough. I don't chase things. And I'm not, if it's a chase, I'm not interested. And I think most of the world operates on chasing. So as soon as it looks and smells like a chase, like you said, TikTok shop, someone makes $700,000 in a day or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's the chase. That's what someone is going to go do. And I think producing content is sort of playing that game, but in a way that I feel dignified. You know, I'm sort of playing the chase game or helping companies chase traffic and these kinds of things. But if you're going to do it, at least do it well. And there were great artists selling NFTs for sure and using it the absolute best use cases possible, you know, at the time, selling NFTs and making a living. And that was great to see artists actually make money from their art. But man, the stupid bored yacht chase, a chimp or ape or whatever it was, you know, like all these people just taking advantage of it and chasing and not using it for its intended purpose and just leveraging it for selfish reasons. Once it smells like selfishness and cheap hack and that kind of stuff, like that's such a big criteria for me. And if it feels like a million people are going to start chasing this because they think they can get a better parking spot or a nicer car or whatever, I'm out. That's not the way the universe works. The universe does not provide to chasers and hackers. To me, the devil does that. You know, God is benevolent and the devil is tricky and patient and gives people opportunities every day to fall over. And the devil is patient and can wait 40 years for you to fall. That's cool. You know, by the devil, hey, no problem. I can wait 40, 50 years. You'll fall. I'll trip you up. And so that's how I look at it. Like chasing is the devil's work, and there's serious discipline work to be done today. And if I'm chasing, then I'm not working on the disciplined work.
This is annoying because you've opened up like a whole new Pandora's box about that I have in my head right now about making decisions. I'm going to we're going to talk about this for no more than 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap on your brand online, your personal brand.
Okay.
How do you draw that circle that we've kind of harped on for so long? I know that obviously you've lived, you know, some years, so you have more perspective, right? And when you have more perspective, it's easier for you to look back and be like, well, just over time, like I just realized that certain things really annoy me and I don't like them. And I only learned that through repetition, perspective, and time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But say that you were talking to somebody who liked to 80-20 stuff. And just hypothetically.
Well, that's awesome. You know, everyone is different.
No, I know. But what is your framework or like methodology for picking stuff that you want to commit to?
Well, first of all, no one should follow me or listen to me. I've so constructed a path for myself that it makes no sense for anyone else. And so,
why?
I think that's the point of life, like why you have once in a universe DNA. Why pursue other people's DNA and outcomes and these kinds of things? Like, why would I try to imitate someone else and their life? I've been given this opportunity today. Sure, many of the things we do may look alike and be very similar in implementation, but if I'm honoring my DNA, I'm honoring something unique. So why would I pursue someone else's life? So there are ideals that I follow that come from reading the wisdom of incredible thinkers and people who've been happy for, eons. It's like this study on, or this series on mindfulness by Ron Siegel. He says everyone's chasing happiness today, but no one listens to the people who've been happy for centuries. Like, you want to learn to be happy, go read stories of nuns and people who practiced meditation and prayer and giving to others. They were happy people. They didn't have a lot, and they were happy. Read Viktor Frankl, read G.K. Chesterton, um, read C.S. Lewis. Any of these types of authors where these people had wisdom. None of this is new. We're just trying to fit modernity into this framework that has been proven to work for thousands of years. And it's silly nonsense. Like, the internet will not make you happy, and making money on the internet will not make you happy, and working from home won't make you happy. I just met someone who is very, very sad and upset about the way her career has gone and how people take advantage of her. And she does work for free and doesn't get paid, and she lets her clients go for a long time without paying. And she's like, everything I do, I just get taken advantage of. I should just go get a job. I said, what do you think is going to happen if you get a job? You're going to get taken advantage of. It's because, like, people don't see their objective self, and they don't do the hard work of looking for that. And so they end up chasing the life of somebody else, when you can just look at dignified, wise people from the past, how they thought, how they lived, and just sort of model that. And it has nothing to do with the internet or computers or anything like that. So there is a dignified, well understood way to live that most people insult and think is nonsense. And yet those people, the people who like dismiss the classic ways of living, are so unhappy. So I would just say, look at the evidence. I'm a happy person. I have 3 kids who are great, really smart. They do well in school. They're self-motivated. My oldest is going to be valedictorian. My 2 boys are ripped. They're stronger and smarter than literally everyone in their grades. I did not force any of that on them. They are self-motivated because I think they grew up in a household of parents who have discipline, and they're dedicating their lives to something bigger, not dedicating their lives to success or hacks or any of that stuff. So I know through prayer and other things that I'm doing what I need to be doing, and I pay attention to that. And that's the only truth I have in my life. And everything else is practical nonsense. So why chase anything when it didn't come to me in the same way that the truth comes to me? And what am I going to miss out? Money that I could just go make more of tomorrow. Money is practically infinite. So as an adult, I've not been hungry. My kids have never lacked for anything, and I've worked very hard to get to where I am. So why would I let anything else in that circle? When you know who you are and you know what your mission is, then you don't need uh, hacks or shortcuts. Good content will always win. So just produce good content. If AI helps you do that, great. If, you know, a million TikTok videos help you do that, great. Doesn't really matter. Just pursue the goodness of who you are and the uniqueness of your DNA, and be as nobly pursuing that as possible, and looking at the bigger life than my success, my bank account, my car that I drive, the way people think about me and the impression that I make and being remembered and all of these things, because it's all nonsense. And people who thought this way 200 years ago, they're forgotten. name more than 10 people from 200 years ago. Most people can't do it for 1824 because we all get forgotten. So the best thing that we can do is pursue what we know to be true, which is life is short and we can make it worthwhile by pursuing the truth.
Dude, that was one of the best monologues I've ever heard in my entire life. If you do not clip this and post it on X or wherever you want to post it, I will be so upset.
Dude, you're prepared to be upset.
Oh my God. I think there's a longing for or there, maybe there was or there still is, but there's like a longing for like somebody who's lived life on their own terms to just sit you down like man to man, hand you a glass of scotch and a cigar and say, here's the way it is.
You know what?
And that was the last 10 minutes.
I have felt somewhere in this is sort of a mastermind group, and I could get a group of people together. I seem to attract these types of people who want more out of their lives. And my new book, which should be out this summer, called Mental Prisons, a self-help book for nobody. It is all about this. Like, that's the point of the book. It's because we are all holding prison bars that are not attached to anything and looking out at the world, believing we're in prison when we are free the moment we let go of the bars. And so it's not about being in prison. It's about letting go of bars that you're holding on that were never imprisoning you in the first place. It's just all in your head. And
you picked them up and you held them there.
Yeah,
your decision.
Exactly. And you had a whole bunch of other mental prisoners helping you along the way. And they're like, oh, where are your bars? What's the matter with you? Why don't you have a TikTok? Why aren't you using AI? How come you're only making $40,000 a month at your business? Why aren't you doing 80,000? Why aren't you doing XYZ? Those are the bars. So that's what you're like, what is it that makes you so decisive? I know what the bars are, man. I suffered for 30 years holding on to the bars, and now I don't need them. And if that makes me struggle in different ways, fine, but at least I'm not holding on to prison bars and believing my life is so difficult and I have to suffer.
In a way, tell me if I'm wrong here. You're almost like telling me that when you're being sold. You're like the guy that's been in sales for a really long time, and then you go to a car dealership and they're like asking you all these questions and you're like, yeah. Like, you see every trick, you're dodging every bullet. You're like, I've seen this game before. I know what these prison bars are. I'm not picking them up.
Absolutely.
I'm not falling for it.
I got a phone call the other day from some publishing company, and they said, we think your book, your second book, Failure to Fracture, has tons of business potential. I said, yeah, you're probably right. What are the signs that you have, though? What's the data? Well, we have scouts who look for high potential books. And I was like, okay, but like, what's the data?
Based on what?
Right. And basically, they couldn't answer that question. And then I was like, oh, okay, you're just here to sell me on some sort of monthly plan. Like, it's so easy to weed this stuff out. But if you think that some person is going to call you out of the blue to sell your thing because they think it's great, that just doesn't happen, man. And the only reason it has happened to me, that my book is actually published, that I am a published author, and I'm not saying this like I'm super proud of it, but this for some reason has status with other people. The only reason I have a book publisher is because a book publisher watched my YouTube videos and said, this guy is not following the crowd. That's the type of author I want on my roster. And he begged me to write a book for 2 years. And so did a lot of other people around me. And so I was like, okay, I'll write a book. So I wrote a book. But like, people will write a book to try to get rich. It's just like crazy to me. And yeah, it does happen, but you have to then believe you are one of millions of people who will be successful out of the millions who will be failures, who will pursue it for the wrong reasons. And if it's a chase, you're probably going to fail. So that's what I mean, like discovering who you are and honoring that unique DNA. I literally, the only reason I got the books finished, my first 4 books, is because I hit a point where I said, I cannot go another day where this book isn't written. And I wrote the first 3 books in under a month. And I wrote the 4th book very quickly and realized it wasn't the right book. I wrote that book 3 times and finally got the right thing. And I have 5 to 6 more books planned. But the only reason I start writing is because I get the itch gets so bad that I can no longer say no to scratching it. And I say no to writing books every single day until it's like it just has to get out. And it's the same way, like, okay, this NFT thing sounds interesting. Okay, this AI thing sounds interesting. Well, if there's real value in it, I've got enough discipline to where my BS detector says, okay, yeah, this actually is legit. And you know what? AI content's legit, but not content from AI. It's content produced by AI that's highly edited by people.
Dude, I cannot wait for this book to come out. And you asked a question earlier.
Yeah.
You're like, who am I to, like, I don't know if this is probably not the right way of saying it, but like, who am I to be listened to?
Yeah.
Why would people listen to me? That's probably the right way of asking that question. You ever heard of the term like post money?
Is this like after you've got FU money and then you can say and do whatever you want?
Yeah, it's like the super, super billionaires. Like, they don't need to drive a Ferrari or any like
right.
supercar, hypercar, because they're just beyond money. Like, money is not even a thing to them.
Right.
They just like burn it to stay warm.
Yeah.
You're like that, but in a different way.
But without the money.
No, dude, you have the money.
I have some money.
Yeah, but you're beyond the game in a way.
Well,
the toxic part of the game. You're like, yeah, I have a business. It fulfills. It, it does good work. People stick around. People like to work with us because we do good work. But more importantly, they like to work with me because there's a kind of a assimilation there. And that has its own compartment in my life. It plays its own role, but beyond that, like, there's more to life than like 5 AI scripts that'll get you $1,000 a day, right? Like, a lot of people spend their entire day wrapped around this one subject, and they never see people, they never hang out, they never make weird music.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't believe there's a quick path to success, then why would you be tempted?
Yeah.
And chances are, anyone who tells you there's a quick path to success, that's their quick path to success, selling other people on the idea.
tell me if I answered your question for you, because I'm trying desperately here. The why behind your temptation. If you can justify the temptation because you're like, I believe in this thing, this is what I want to do, it fits my MO. If your why is satisfied and justified, then that like kind of counts towards the decisive camp.
Not just why, but if it's something that fits into your DNA, like I know where I'm going, man. Like you don't have to. I don't need to read any more books about what to do with my life. You know, I needed that when I was 20 and maybe even 30. But there's enough truth out in there in the world that now I just am reminded through wisdom and scripture and participating in things bigger than myself. I'm just like Buckminster Fuller said, I'm the trim tab. I'm the tiniest part of a rudder that steers a ship. I don't even think I'm that important. You know, like I'm a cog in an engine that's one of like 25 engines that powers a big ship. Like this engine can function without me as the cog. But like if I spend my life pretending that I'm a serpentine belt that goes around the cogs, well, no, I'm not the belt. I'm the cog. And so why fight that? Why fight my identity? So you know when things resonate with you, honor that. And you know what? There's a lot of things that resonate with people because they're dysfunctional and their mind is disordered. They haven't done the hard work, and so they do the hacks and they question everything because they have no idea who they are. And so they start changing their lives in nonsense ways, uh, changing their bodies, like in all sorts of weird ways. And it's like they're pursuing answers where there are none because they're looking through bars every day. And they never question the bars, and they never even ask, how did I get here? Why am I holding bars? So I don't even know how the idea started of mental prisons. I just remember coming up with this idea of standing holding on prison bars that aren't attached to anything. And so I hired a cartoonist who illustrated like 25 cartoons for me, or comic strips. Those are all in the book. And yeah, the book kind of just fell out in this pile of word vomit a few times. And I have like a 150-page note file. But I think you just have to know who the person is that's holding on the bars. Tell that person you can let go of the bars, and then stare that person in the mirror, stare them down and say, you are the cause of all of my suffering and false beliefs. And until you do that hard work, you're just holding on to bars, and you might have tricked yourself into thinking you're not even holding on to them, but you still are. There's a show called The Prisoner from 1968 that had a huge influence on me and this sort of belief system. It's called The Prisoner because he finds himself sort of imprisoned on an island where he's sort of free, but nobody has names. Everyone is just a number. And he stands out because he's the individual. And it's a revolutionary TV show. And it's about everything: politics, religion, society, self-belief, all this stuff. So nothing I've said is new. I'm just packaging it up in a way that resonates with me.
I think the same could be said. I mean, that's a very like musician thing to do. Every musician, you ask your, I don't know if friends is the right word, but you know Steve Vai very well.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if you asked him his top 3 influences, they made Steve Vai. For somebody else, Steve Vai is one of the top 3 influences.
Of course.
We're all just derivatives of things that touched us.
Well, I like what this other musician, Trey Gunn, said, that we're we don't invent anything. We dig through the dirt and then come across something, and we're just constantly like pulling stuff out of the dirt, and then we're like, oh my goodness, look at this
That's a
rock.
keeper.
Like, I need to really dig into this rock. And that's like a song. You don't write it, you discover it. And you might toss something behind your head thinking, I don't need this. This doesn't resonate with me. And another person sees it and they're like, that's what I've been looking for my whole life, you know? So it's less about invention and more about uh, archaeology and just paying attention, you know?
It's less about archaeology. It's more about paying attention. A lot of what you say is it's about looking inward and discovering, like taking a moment to stop, look, and listen.
Well, E.F. Schumacher, in his book A Guide for the Perplexed, said, an eye cannot observe itself. Like the eye cannot look into itself to understand what is happening. Your eye will never understand how it sees. And I think a lot about that kind of thing. Like, I'll never actually understand, but I do believe that I was created and by something with intelligence that far exceeds my own. I'm like a dog trying to understand what a human is telling me. So that is as smart as I'm ever going to get. So the best I can do is be the most dogly dog I can be and follow the orders of my master and be like a respectable, honorable dog for this owner. And so my life is not, in some senses, my life is my own, but in many senses, it is not. And I didn't create my DNA. I didn't pick my circumstances. Yet I have them. And I believe that they are inherently good. And things don't happen to me, they happen for me. And so I should honor that in as comprehensive a way as possible. And if that means learning when to say yes and no, learning what songs I like and which ones I don't, learning which conversations I want to have and which ones I don't, who I want to spend time with and who I don't, what businesses to pursue and which ones I shouldn't. It's all rooted in the same thing.
Wild, man. I think I'm going to listen back to this episode and redigest it. I know for you, you're like nonchalant about it, but like for the curious ears, this is a lot to chew on.
Well, I think AI content just has a lot of opportunity in the world. And
We're
that's what
wrapping
it
it
comes
there.
down to.
We'll talk about personal brand and all that later. But
Okay.
Man, thanks for coming on. What a wild turn we took at the hour mark. But
Joe,
man,
thanks for entertaining
I just want to
this.
say, like, just to wrap on this point, I hope that this book and the following books spur you on to talk about this stuff more, because in this world of AI prompts, $1,000 a day, get rich quick, and all this stuff, there's so much more. As we talked about, there's more content coming out, but there's more content coming out on the zig side, not the zag side.
Yeah, but Joe, no one wants the zag. That's the issue.
They do.
No, they don't.
You might, on the zag side, you might not go a mile wide, but you definitely will go a mile deep. And it as you said, you don't care about how massive of a following you have. You'd rather have 30 warm leads than 500 cold leads. I think there'd be more than 30 warm leads, but they'd be warm.
I agree. I always say there's no competition. It's like arguing over a bucket of water in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
There's infinite availability of opportunity, resources, these kinds of things. But I've met a lot of people who expressed interest in zagging, and as soon as I ask them to get serious about zagging, it falls apart. And so we'll see. I hope this book does something, but honestly, my plan was to delete it when I finished writing it. And I sent it to a friend. I said, hey, I'm probably going to delete this. I've spent a few $1,000s on it and a lot of time, but I've really worked through a lot of this stuff. And he's like, he read through some of it. He goes, you would be insane to delete this, which only made me want to delete it even more. But I'm going to honor the thing in me that said, you need to write this book. And I'm going to listen to other people who say this book has really helped me, and hope that it can do some good in the world. But as I say in the book, it's a self-help book for nobody. All I've done is find a mile-long key to a mile-long lock that no one else has.
Even if it touches one person, it'll have been worth it.
Yeah, I did. It did
Because
that.
you can give the $2,000 away, $3,000 away, and to charity or whatever, and who knows what kind of an impact that might have. But to change the trajectory of somebody's life on a thing that'll live forever, that book is kind of an NFT.
Yeah,
the Anthony NFT.
And it'll be forgotten in a few years, and that's fine. So I thought of it as a mandala. Like, just it's sand that's beautifully arranged that gets blown away in the wind. But maybe I don't need to turn a fan on in the room.
Let's play devil's advocate. I think that that information might touch somebody, and then the regurgitation of that might touch somebody in the next generation.
We'll see.
I think that it's worth putting out, man. And if you do decide to delete it, which I would be super sad about, send me that file because I will read it cover to cover.
I'll send you the file right now. But thank you.
All right,
I appreciate
man.
it. Thanks for having me, and to anyone who even got this far, thank you for listening. For all
you get a gold star. Where can people find you if they want to hit you up? And
I always say this: don't look for me. You don't need to find it. If you are interested in what I do, it's pretty easy to find.
All right. Are you going to be mad if I put your X link and all that stuff in the description of the YouTube?
No, that's fine.
All right. Then I'll make it easy for them to find you.
Okay.
Man, thanks for coming on, dude. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Joe.